So I'm here with Mr. Geoff Thomas, ex-Crystal Palace, ex-Wolves, in fact we've not got time to list all the clubs he played for, and England of course as well. Great career as a footballer, incredible post-football story as well, which we'll get into shortly.
Okay.
But let's begin. By the way, it's a big birthday for you next year, aren't you? And annoyingly, you look at least 10 years younger than the big 6-0. So
Yeah.
what's the secret of your youthful looks, Geoff?
I haven't got any secrets, but I think just staying healthy and trying to stay fit, and I think getting on a bike and occasionally and doing crazy things has helped for sure.
Yeah, well, we'll get on to that. Football-wise, Manchester City fan, born a long throw from the old main road.
Literally 2 streets away from Main Road. My gran used to live on Kippack Street in the shadows of the big main stand, and we were just literally the street across from the Croft. Manchester people know what the Croft's all about.
Yeah, fantastic. So growing up, of course, I have to do the maths here. So you were born sort of 63, 64.
64.
So that was a great team, actually. Do you remember way
I
back?
do. I used to go occasionally with my dad. My dad used to work Saturdays, unfortunately, so I used to wait for him. And we used to sometimes go when it probably about with 20 minutes to go, and they used to open the big gates, and you used to be able to walk in. And we used to
Really?
go, yeah, my dad used to put me on his shoulders in the Kippack end and watch the last 10 minutes of the game or so.
So we're talking about when you were sort of 6, 7 years old. You know, the great Fanny Lee, who sadly just left us. Mike Summerby, Colin Bell,
Joe Corrigan, yeah.
Joe Corrigan, that era.
Yeah, Mike Doyle, Tommy Booth, Alan Oakes. Yeah,
Joe Mercer,
Malcolm Allison.
and Malcolm Allison.
Yeah, fabulous time. It was, you look back at the films now and the pitches that they were playing on. I actually went to a game where they got stuffed by West Ham. I think it was about 5, 6. And there was no grass on the pitch. And Joe Corrigan kicked the ball out on a sticky surface, and then I can't remember who volleyed it back straight in. He sort of looked at his foot to see how much mud was on his boot. Somebody volleyed it back, and it was like 4 or 5-0 by then. But it was it's a day you remember for all the wrong things.
Now, you were an electrician, were you not?
I was many things when I left school. I was first of all, I found out I didn't like heights because I tried to be a lift engineer. And as soon as somebody put me out on a plank 13 floors up, I realised, no, not for me. And then I became a painter and decorator for a little while, and then eventually got an apprenticeship, electrician, which I did for 2.5 years. But then football came knocking.
Yeah, and he turned you back on because I think you were earning more money initially, weren't you, as an electrician than you were in football?
At first I was playing part-time football for me, but I was non-contract for Rochdale.
Yeah.
But I think I played about 10 games for them. And the only time I scored for Rochdale was against Crewe. And Dario Gradi just kept an eye on me for bizarrely, I don't know why, for a little while. And he gave me the first opportunity of being a professional footballer. So I got a 2-year contract for less money than I was earning being an apprentice spark. But it was my opportunity. It was against my dad's wishes, but I thought, give it a go.
Oh, he didn't want you to be a footballer?
I had another year to be a qualified electrician. He wanted to, or 6 months. He wanted me to qualify and then make a decision, but the time was now, and and it was now or never. So I just thought, give it a go.
Looking at your football career, I thought you obviously had spent some time at Crewe, but it was a big jump from Crewe to Crystal Palace, who were in the old second division, weren't they? What we now call the Championship. But it was quite a big jump, and in no time you get promoted. You're playing in cup finals, so I guess it was a big jump for Crystal Palace as well. But for you, 1 minute you're Rochdale, then Crewe, the next minute you're captaining Palace, and it's big time.
Yeah, bizarre though. At Crewe I was playing alongside Dave Platt. And he'd just come from Man United. He dropped down to come to Crewe to start his career again. And Dario Gradi was always very honest. He said straight away, Platty's going to play in the top flight. He's going to play for England eventually. For me, he said you might play at the top flight, but you need to take a few steps before getting there. And that's why he sort of earmarked Crystal Palace pretty early for me, because he knew, I think he had a relationship with Ron Nodes and Steve Coppell, and I think they were watching me for quite a while. But bigger clubs were watching me, and he advised me not to really take them opportunities, because Liverpool were watching. I went and had a trial at Everton. Probably the same time you was a player at Everton. That's another story from I've just found out about. But yeah, I just felt Crystal Palace was the right step. You know, I knew what my limitations were, and I knew I had to learn a lot more. I came into football late, and I thought, yeah, this was right. And I hit the ground running. I scored on my second game down at Selhurst Park, and I became captain after 6 months. And it was just a fantastic environment. The dressing room was chaos. Ian Wright, Mark Wright, just massive characters that were all desperate to make it in football. But they were all of an age where it was like last chance saloon.
Yeah.
And
Ian Wright came to it late, didn't he?
Late.
I mean, years of non-league football. And
yeah, I mean, discarded by other clubs. And, you know, he was too small, he was this, that, the other, all excuses that were thrown at him. And he proved that he was the player he was at Crystal Palace, and obviously went on to massive things. But
somebody called Gareth Southgate, I don't know what happened to him, but he played with him as well.
He was knocking about. He was at first an apprentice when I first arrived, but he soon became a big part of the first team squad and playing numerous times. And when I was injured, he used to take my place. And he actually, when I left, he took the captain's armband.
That was a golden period for Palace fans. There've been others since, obviously, but you know, you got promoted to the First Division. I mean, famously that season where I think you lost 9-0 at Anfield, and then beat them in one of the all-time epic semi-finals of the FA Cup, 4-3. Final against United, 3-3.
Yeah.
And then the replay defeat,
which nobody talks about.
Yeah.
Not good.
Yeah. But so just tell us about that. Did you play in the 9-0 at Anfield?
I did. I actually hit the post at 0-0 with a free kick.
Oh, could have made all the difference.
Could have changed it.
Yeah.
And I missed a penalty when it was 6-0, which again could have changed it.
Could have changed it, yeah.
But I remember coming off the pitch, there was a few players in, right for one was in tears, and Steve Coppell at half-time gave us a blasting for being 3-0 down. And not much was said at the end, but back then as well, we had the big bath. And everybody was slowly, everybody very despondent with how everybody performed. But, you know, bizarrely, I look back at it, we didn't play that bad. And, you know, you look at stats now where teams have 20, 30 shots. They only had about 14 shots at our goal and scored 9 of them. And we were getting in the bath one by one, and I was in the bath, and John Pemberton just stepped into the bath and just went, I think Liverpool will be okay this year. You know, and that was it. We all just cracked up laughing. And we had to dive under the water so Steve Coppell and the coaching staff didn't hear us. And by the time we got off the coach back at the ground, we were ready for the next game. We were Southampton away, and we got a point there, and it showed a lot of character.
It did, yeah.
And I think the only casualty from that 9-0 was the goalkeeper, Perry Suckling. He was a great lad and a great goalkeeper. England under 21. Steve Coppell went out and bought £1 million, the first £1 million goalkeeper in Nigel Martin. And that was the start, because the year after, in the next season, we survived in the top flight pretty well. We'd experienced the FA Cup final, but then we finished third in the top flight.
Yeah.
You know, I think we only lost 2 games before Christmas that year. So we were up there competing with the Liverpools and Man United.
The highest ever.
The highest ever. Yeah.
Just go back to the season before. Obviously, you then met Liverpool in the FA Cup semi-final. You know, on the back of a 9-0 defeat at Anfield. And famously, you won 4-3 at Adam Pardew with the winner.
Yeah.
Something he's never stopped talking about ever since.
And never will.
And never will. But what an absolute epic that was. And then obviously the final, another epic 3-3. This guy called Ian Wright, but not an awful lot of people knew about. Came on and made a massive impact.
And he broke his leg about 6 weeks before against Derby. And there was no chance of him playing in the FA Cup final. And it was a big loss in the semi-final. We thought we got no chance without Wrighty, to be honest. But we pulled it off, and that day was made magic by John Motson, his commentary of that game as well. It lives with you forever, you know, John Pember down the wing and across, and then, you know, he does what he does. And it made it so special. But I just think Wrighty was just a piece of magic when he got on a football pitch. And when he came on at Wembley, we were being beat 2-1. And his first touch, he scored a goal. He turned Pallister and Steve Bruce. He made them look like fools and just slid it in and then scored again. And then we were 7 minutes away in extra time. Gone into extra time. We're 7 minutes away. For me, I was thinking about lifting the FA Cup, yeah. And I've actually got a picture. When we went round, we had to do the thing. We had to go up to the steps and meet the dignitary and everything. And as I was coming down the steps, I just turned to the Crystal Palace fans, and it was only about 14,000 there because of ticket restrictions. And I just did that, lifted up to the fans to say we'll be back as if next time the cup's going to be there. And I've got the picture at home, and so Matt Busby's in between that, which is,
really?
you know, it's just a nice.
That's pretty cool,
yeah.
isn't it?
And it's fantastic memories. You know, it's the worst place to lose, but you know, to be a part of Crystal Palace history and being the first time we got to Wembley as well, and been there numerous times since. It's just, I feel privileged to be saying I was the captain of that team.
You went on to Wolves. I feel like I'm wearing a Wolves top, actually. But the injuries started to kick in, didn't they?
Well, I started ever so well. I've got to be honest. I have to go back a season. The start of the season, Ian Wright had left at Crystal Palace, and Mark Bright was talking about going to Sheffield Wednesday, which he eventually did. That team was being broken up, and then, but before the season started, Kenny Dalglish rang me up on a Friday night,
right?
During the summer period, saying Blackburn are really keen. I want you to come here. They've just bought Alan Shearer for £3 million, I think it was. And they offered 2.8 million for me, and we were playing Blackburn the first game of that season, and my head was all over the place. You know, Kenny had rang me up saying, "Don't get injured. We're signing you Monday." And it was just a bizarre time, and it took me a while to recover from that. The deal fell through for numerous reasons, but my last season was one to forget. We got relegated, and you know, Steve Coppell left, and it was obvious it was time for me to go. I had Man City come in for me. I spoke to Peter Reid. I spoke to Newcastle, Sheffield Wednesday, Trevor Francis. Trevor Francis told me, don't go to Man City, it's going to fall apart. And he said it's the best club I've ever played for, but I'm telling you, don't go there. And that's not saying I want you to come to Sheffield Wednesday that much, I'm saying this, but just don't go to Man City. And he was proven right. And Wolves were desperate to get me, and they sold me a story that they've got Steve Bull, they've got numerous players there, but it's not enough. We need a leader. And I just got caught up in that. And I just, first 8-10 games, I scored 4 goals. I was flying.
Yeah.
We were looking like one of the strongest teams and cruising. Went up to Sunderland, scored probably one of the best goals I've scored in my career. And a tackle took me out and put me out for 2 years, and never really got back to that same level, but still had about another 9 years in football. You know, it lasted a little while longer, but it took the edge off Wolves, because I think we had the making of a decent side.
And let's not forget, 9 caps for England as well. So you got to the top. You never lost. Never lost.
Never. And
there we go.
You know, when you look back, you certain things that you wish that happened differently. Obviously, the Wembley FA Cup final, you wish you played differently in the replay. And I'd love the opportunity to go back and lose in an England shirt. Because, like you say earlier on, where I had to find a different way to get to the top. Every little step I was taking in my career, I always felt it was right. So when I got an England cap, I didn't feel like out of place. And when I was playing, I never felt out of place. And I had this moment of flipping ridiculousness where I hit the corner flag when I should have scored a goal against France just before the Euros. And Graham Taylor had a decision to make, and obviously I give him an opportunity to drop me, and that was it. I was on the standby list for that squad, and nobody dropped out from that. So that was my England career over, really. So, yeah, that's a regret, but I've got to be honest, I loved every single minute of football, and coming from being an apprentice electrician, a failed lift engineer, failed painter and decorator, I had 18 years of professional, loved every minute.
So, in a sense, that's the first half of your career / adult life done.
Yeah.
And for many footballers, you go into coaching or whatever, and of course you have no idea at that stage the start of the second half of your life and your journey is just about to begin, because you retired at 35, 36?
37.
37, I beg your pardon, 37 years old. And within 18 months?
Yeah, it was less than that, actually.
Yeah, so just tell us what happened.
Well, I had what I thought I had my next career planned. And I thought I was being one of these bright footballers that had tried to plan my retirement. So I'd invested at the age of 28 into a retail business that seemed to be growing. And when I finished football, I had an idea that would keep me financially okay. So when I make decisions as a coach, as a manager, I'm not thinking about just the financials. So I make decisions for the right reasons, not that just stay in a job I'm going to, because the chairman's told me to drop him, I'll drop him. So I was all in my head, I had it all planned. I had a business running, it's going to be successful, then I'll go back into football. I'll have 6 months out, learn about the business, then go back into football. I've been a reserve team manager at Barnsley under Dave Bassett, was learning so much under Dave, such a fabulous guy. And that was my vision. And then that all changed. I had a phone call after seeing a doctor for the first time in my life, really. I always looked after by football clubs. And after seeing the GP, he did a blood test and he said, 2 weeks, I'll get back to you. Within hours, he was on the phone saying, we need to see you. And I'm going, you need to tell me why you need to see me, which I regret now as well. And he told me, I think you've got leukemia.
And there are no signs of this?
Oh, there were signs.
What
and
were
that's
the
why
signs?
I went to the GP.
Yeah.
My wife got fed up with me and moaning. Even though I stopped training, I was losing weight. Started having night sweats. I was feeling tired. I was feeling fatigued. Everything didn't add up. And the final thing, I had a lump in my stomach, which I found out was my spleen that was fighting a leukemia and gone 8 times bigger than it should be. But I was pressing it, thinking it was like just a muscle strain. And it just all added up at the end when and it just put me on a totally different track to where I was at first. My illness was chronic myeloid leukemia, and it was the best was 3 years that I had. There was no cure. And then
that's what he told you?
That's what I got told very, very early on. Yeah, there's no cure, and it could be anything, at best 3 years before the leukemia takes over.
So you're 37 years old, Geoff. You've been fit all your life. Fitness has been a key part of your profession. And, we all have mortality. We're all aware of that. But at the age of 37, you're never expecting to hear that news, are you? How do you deal with that?
It's really weird, because you just go into such a dark place for 2 or 3 days, and then you start relying on others for the first time in your life to tell you how it is. And then I met my saviour, Charlie Craddock, Professor Charlie Craddock, who was I didn't know it's only by chance where I lived I met this guy. And he said, well, you've got a chance, we can beat this if we find a match for a stem cell transplant. And then it all becomes really brutal about facts, and only 20% of the population of the world have an opportunity of getting a match to have this procedure done. And I was lucky my sister, my one and only sister, was good enough. Not great, and we couldn't find anybody else, but it was workable, as Charlie said. We can make this work. And so, because my illness was chronic, me and my wife made a bucket list. I had, say, about 4 months before I went through this procedure. And because my girls were 10 and 7 at the time, we went to Paris, Disney, we took them for Christmas to Mauritius. And for the first time ever, we've been away in the winter time. Met some really good friends, and knowing that, and I got told to put weight on, because the procedure is going to make you lose loads of weight, which I did.
So
for the
first yourself with food
and drinking and everything, really, everything during that holiday. Came back probably about 16.5 stone, and which fighting weight, football was always about 12.4. Came back from the holiday, had another week to prepare, going in hospital, and then I was in isolation for 5 weeks. Radiotherapy, being bombarded with that for 3 days, in preparing you for the transplant, and intense chemotherapy. And then you have this, just a bag of fluid from your sister that you see going into you. And in this time you've lost your hair, you look like, as you can imagine, a cancer, I call them victims really, but as a patient you just look like each other. And I was one of them, and I'd seen them in the clinic before I was starting to look ill, and I was just turning into one of them, and you become a fact, and you know, a number, and are you going to survive this? And it is a mental fight as well, and I just found trying to take any positives. So after probably about 3 or 4 days of having this bag of fluid coming into me, the blood count started going from negative to ground zero, started to improve, so my immune system was starting to kick in. Straight away that was like a green light to me to say, right, I'm on my way to beating this.
So just prior to that, you're looking at yourself, as you say, you're looking like a cancer victim. You've been told best case scenario of 3 years. You've been told stem cell, 20% chance. All the odds are stacked against you. And there you are, a young man, not looking at your best, going through not very pleasant radiotherapy, chemotherapy. What's your mindset at that point?
Beating it. It's no other choice. It's you know, it's black and, like I say, it's black and white. You either give in or you fight. And I was fighting for my life, and that's what you do. But like I say, you're relying on the skill of other people to get you there. And you just try and do everything they say, because you know this is their only chance. So I came out 5 weeks, I was just over 11 stone. I was just bone, really. And it took me about 6 months. I was just throwing up all the time, being ill. But I knew I had to go back in hospital for, you know, because like the flu could kill me. The immune system's not shot through, yeah. So I went back a few times, had shingles, which again was dangerous, and they just pumped you with antibiotics. And just knowing, Charlie had this skill of telling you, pre-warning you what could happen. So I knew everything. I even know now what could potentially happen with my body, because I've had a radiotherapy. And so I'm aware, I've been made aware of what could happen. And knowing that, you know, right, okay, if it does happen, we can do something about it. And that's where I've been ever since. If something happens, we can make it work and beat it.
So where did the idea of the fundraising begin? Because, you know, you can easily, we're sitting here now and you've done so much, you've raised so much money, you've covered so many miles on the bike. Why did that happen initially, and how?
Well, I think you know the chap, Neil Ashton, who was a journalist who was working, I think, for the Sunday People back then. And I didn't know this at the time. He was a massive Crystal Palace fan. And again, I didn't know this at the time. He used to have my picture on his bedroom wall. So when he found out I was ill, he was the first one that came up and did a piece for the Sunday papers saying, you know, former international player, fight against cancer and all this sort of thing. So he was doing a follow-up story when I was told, I wasn't told I'd gone into remission. Yeah, no, he was. I'd just been told I'd gone into remission. So I had the transplant in January 2004. It took a year to get into remission, full remission.
What a day that is, by the way, when you're told that.
You know, it wasn't because I'd already forgotten. I was already sort of chucking that back. I was always looking forward.
You'd moved on.
So I was already asking Charlie, what can I do to help? Because I had still a profile from football. So that's why I was happy to talk to Ash. And he said, what next? And I said, well, I need to come up with an idea to raise money and to say thank you to Charlie and his team and all that. And he and both of them had done the walks for leukemia, and various other people had done various different things. And Neil reminded me about the first positive I had in my fight against what I was going through was reading Lance Armstrong's book. And we all know what the story about Lance now, but back then...
Well, it doesn't remove what he did, though.
No.
So it was a beating charity. It was given cancer. It was given 5%, I think.
Yeah, and the yellow wristbands were all over the place.
Yeah.
Live strong. I read his book in a matter of 2 days.
Yeah,
which is great for me. And that put me on some positive. If he can do that, then I can do this. And you know, obviously, I took from that my first positive, and he reminded me of that Ash, and he just said, why don't you do the Tour de France? Flippant sort of thing. And I went, what does that really entail? And I knew it was 3 weeks, and I knew it was going to be tough, and I was still skinny and I didn't have a bike. Never had a bike since I was about 14. So I said, give me 3 days. He said, I'll do it with you, and I'll get a couple of journalists to do it, so we'll give you, and this is before social media. So I'll get a few journalists who I know will be keen to support you. And 6 months later, I find myself, probably just before the tour, doing my first 100-mile ride. Because the first ride I went out, I did 6 miles and nearly killed me.
Right.
So
Start.
It's a start. And probably took seriously training from March because of weather and everything like that. And I had to be careful of the immune system. So only March onwards, I started seriously training, started doing 25 miles a day, and then got up to 100 miles the weekend before the tour. And we did 2 events, 100 mile each, back to back, and all of us didn't look in great shape from that, but we started the tour, and I was talking to so many different journalists who were all saying, you're going to walk, and I just said, I'm not going to walk. And then one journalist just said, you need to respect the tour. And I took that on board, really. And we covered every single mile. We never stopped. Got off the bike. We obviously stopped for a bite to eat here and there, but we took on some of the biggest climbs. And it was 3 weeks of hell, really, looking back. But there was one particular day up the Mount Galibier where stage 14, I always remember it, where I had a camera crew from a football channel that was shown on Sky, and the guys were winding me up saying, you're only here to watch you fail. And it was 3 big climbs that day, and the last one was Galibier, which is the highest point in the Alps. And it started to snow at the top, it was hailing, everything was being thrown at me not to get to the top. Got to the top, I was in tears for the last couple of bends going up there, absolutely fighting, not stopping. And then the guys got out the support crew of the car, and started taking their coats off because I just had a Lycra t-shirt on, Lycra shorts. Socks, I didn't have any gloves, they were taking the socks off. And so I was going down, descending, and looking like Michelin Man. And Neil Ashton was cowering behind a rock waiting for me. He'd been there ages because I was so slow getting up there. You know, as we descended, the clouds cleared, the sun came out. I started peeling off layers of clothes, and at the bottom of the descent, just before we finished the end, a woman waved us down, saying, "Oh, glad I've not missed you. Your other teammates have gone through 8 hours ago." I've gone, yeah, I'm sorry, but I'm really slow. And she said that I'm a research nurse, and I read why you're doing this and everything, and it is fantastic what you're doing. May you carry on. And it was one of the moments where I felt, right, I've got something to aim for now. I can now put all that hardship behind me and really focus on the future, and that's what I've done ever since.
That was the first one. How many have you done?
Involved in another 6, 7 now. I can honestly say the first one I didn't get off. The second one I did in 2007 because I took all the credit. I won the Helen Rawlinson Award
At Sports Personality of the Year.
Yeah, that year, and I was a little bit taken aback and surprised for one, but a bit guilty as well that there were so many people I'd met along the way that would like the opportunity of doing that, and we were doing it for them because they couldn't. But then I found a number of cancer survivors that were really keen to do it. So in 2007, we did it again. I had to miss 2 days because I had a lung infection. I was coughing up blood. And I rang Charlie to say, I'm coughing up blood. He said, right, get off the bike and stop for 2 days, which I did. And then we repeated it in 2015 to celebrate 10 years. And I actually got Lance Armstrong to come and join me for 2 days, which was like, that was a hard decision. But
why was it a hard decision?
Because I knew the stick I was going to get. And
oh, I see. Right, because he blotted his copybook with the drugs.
Right, he'd done that. But I was speaking to Emma, who was the masseur who he absolutely slaughtered in his, in everything, because she was the one that outed him. Really.
Yeah.
I met Emma up in Manchester, and she said, I'm friends with Lance again. I know he's broken. He's been chucked out of his charity and this, that and the other. And I think she'd been told by Matt Lawton, who is a journalist as well, who did the ride with us, that I was half thinking about inviting Lance for a few days, and she just backed me up saying, yeah. And I thought if she could forgive him for what, I thought, well, I just want to sort of pay a little bit back of...
It doesn't remove what he did from a cancer perspective, does it? Or
No, and that's what I was doing. I was purely doing it as a little thank you for you were my little spark of inspiration at the start, and it was just a little bit of a kickback.
Geoff, any idea, and I know you don't want to take the credit for this, there's a lot of people around you, but at least in part, thanks to your efforts and your drive and the pain you've put yourself through on the bike, etc., a rough figure of what's been raised for blood cancer?
Well, I just can say that Cure Leukaemia fund now a clinical network that is leveraged over £300 million worth of drugs into the infrastructure that we've got. So that is delivering drugs that potentially could save lives in the clinical trials. That now we've been doing it for a number of years. We can prove it's saving lives, and we're getting now new therapies to patients an awful lot quicker through the infrastructure with the TAP, which we fund. That is one part. And then money-wise, for the last 3 years, the tour, we're now the charity partner of the Tour de France itself. For the last 3 years, we've raised over £1 million each event. And we need to make that event even bigger than that. Potentially that could be a £5 million event. So we're working with people now to make that even bigger. We're getting bigger personalities getting involved. We've got people from America taking the challenge, raising money for Cure Leukaemia. And it's just growing. And we need to make the charity bigger and make people understand the work that's going on is groundbreaking. And the people, we had a meeting with a corporate business at PwC a couple of nights ago. And the thing I took away from that, we had professors sat opposite one of the directors. And I was just thinking, where else can you get 3 leading people in the world in front of you in an evening after a day's work, where they're more or less, not begging, but they're telling their story to try and influence them to invest into the work they do. You know, you couldn't get that with the big corporate world, but these guys, they work tirelessly to just save people. And they could take money privately if they wanted to, but the NHS is a fantastic organisation that we need to celebrate rather than kicking. And we need to use the NHS an awful lot better. And that's what we're doing with the TAP. We're using that infrastructure to deliver hope to patients, and that patience is key, and that's what we're all about.
Couple more things. Next year, as we've alluded, is your 60. You don't look it. And obviously you want to kind of mark it, don't you, if you like, a celebration of 60 years. Because let's be honest, 23 years ago it wasn't looking great, was it? And you want to do a lot of things, don't you? You want to do the tour again. You're going to do London, Paris, which you wrote me into in a moment of madness. And you're going to have a big year, aren't you?
Yeah, I want to turn it into a massive year. Privately as well, I lost my old man when he was 60 to cancer. And I've never done anything in his name. And I'd really, in my mind anyway, do keep him focused. Because it's going to be tough for me to do the tour next year. I failed 2 years ago and I've had a year off. My knees just didn't want to do it 2 years ago. The year before I loved it. We did, you know, after COVID we had a group of people raise over £1 million. And it was fantastic, even though it was tough, it was fantastic. And I'd love to just feel that sense of achievement again personally, but knowing that we're bringing along a bunch of people who become part of the family, the Cure Leukaemia family, and really get it. Because being on a bike for 3 weeks, you get to know people really, really well because they go through trauma. And I related to what a patient goes through. You have good days and you have bad days, and then you're just hoping that, you know, the good days outweigh the bad ones. So by the time we get to Paris in Nice next year for the Olympics, but you get to Paris and you feel part of something special. And yeah, just I want to feel that again, and not sign off because there's still plenty to do with Cure Leukaemia. We've got great plans. We want to put on events that are going to raise money, and yeah, I just want to just build something that's going to give and the most important thing is give these professors the funds to unshackle them like they've been shackled before.
Okay, final thing, this is going to sound like a really weird question, but I think you'll get what I'm saying here. Very successful career as a footballer, comes to an end in your late 30s, and then you're given, on the face of it, terrible news, terrible trauma. You had to get through hell to get through it. You survived it, and here we are now. It's been a good thing, hasn't it? Getting cancer and what's resulted from all of this.
Yeah.
Would we go as far as to say you could have done without some of the things you've been through, but sizing it all up, it's been an amazingly positive experience for you?
Yeah, it has. And I think if you talk to many survivors, you know, the mental strain and the physical strain that you go through, obviously there's casualties of this, you know, but to come out at the other end, it's life-changing. And many people have said it, that they wouldn't wish it on their worst enemies, but they're glad they've gone through it, because it really gives you the true perspective what life's all about. And it's not about money, you know, personal money. It's not about personal wealth. It's about experiences. It's about being able to share things, and just simple things that you think you do take for granted. I used to just walk out and I used to look at trees and just listen to birds sing. You know, and that's so magical, and that we just take for granted. And family is so important, and you do everything that you can do now to fulfill what they want, and not spoil them, but just make sure that, you know, oh, I don't want to do that because of a reason. Yeah. You always find a reason not to do things, and I find once you've gone through something like this, you want to enjoy experiences, not make an excuse not to experience something.
Well, that's a life message for all of us, isn't it? Geoff, keep doing what you do, keep going.
Hold on, should we not talk about what you're doing next year?
Well, we've mentioned that. I'll be joining you, London, Paris, and I'm going to smash it.
You are going to smash it. It'll be good fun
as well. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I hope people watching this are going to be inspired. They should be, not by me, but by this fella here. Geoff, thanks so much.
Pleasure.
Good man.